It was harvest time in 12th century England when villagers found them. Cowering at the bottom of a wolf-trapping pit were two children, a boy and a girl. They were dressed in strange, metallic-looking clothes and spoke a language no one recognized. But that wasn't the most shocking part. Their skin, from head to toe, was a distinct, vibrant green. They weren't just lost. They were an impossibility that had crawled out of the earth. The children were taken to the home of a local knight, Sir Richard de Calne. They were terrified and refused all food placed before them, seemingly starving themselves. For days they wept, until a servant brought in freshly harvested broad beans, still on the stalk. The children snatched them, frantically breaking open the stalks and devouring the raw beans inside. For months, this was the only food they would touch, a strange diet for a strange pair. Slowly, the children began to adapt, their bodies changing in ways that only deepened the mystery. As they started eating bread and other foods, the green hue of their skin began to fade, eventually becoming indistinguishable from the local English peasants. But this change came at a cost. The boy, who was younger and appeared weaker, grew sick and listless. He was baptized, but soon after he died, leaving his sister as the sole survivor of their impossible arrival. The girl, who was eventually named Agnes, learned to speak English, and when she could finally tell her story, it was more bizarre than anyone could have imagined. She claimed they came from a place called St. Martin's Land, a subterranean world where the sun never rose and everything was bathed in a permanent twilight. She and her brother were herding their father's flock when they heard a loud bell-like sound and were suddenly drawn into a cave.
She said they wandered through the darkness for a long time, following the sound, until they emerged from the cave into the blinding sunlight of the English harvest, where they were found in the Woolpit. She had no idea how they had traveled so far or how to get back. This testimony is the core of the mystery. Was she describing a real place, a fairy tale, or a memory distorted by trauma? The story was recorded by two separate chroniclers of the time, William of Newburgh and Ralph of Coggeshall. This is the detail that resets the entire investigation. These weren't just campfire stories. They were documented by respected historians of the era who treated the account as a factual, albeit miraculous, event. This has led to the first major theory. The children were from a supernatural realm. English folklore is filled with tales of fairies and elves, green men who inhabit a world parallel to our own. To the people of the 12th century, this was the most logical explanation. Under this theory, Woolpit was near a portal between our world and the fairy realm. They accidentally crossed over, and the change in environment, the different air and food, caused the boy's death and the girl's skin to return to normal. Their story of a twilight land perfectly matches folkloric descriptions of the fairy world. The bells they heard could have been the magical music said to lure mortals across the veil. It's a compelling narrative, but it requires a belief in magic. For those seeking a more scientific, if equally strange, explanation, there is the extraterrestrial theory. Proponents of this idea suggest the children were aliens, and St. Martin's Land was not a fairy realm but another planet. Their green skin could be a biological difference, and their strange clothing part of a spacesuit. The cave they wandered through could have been a wormhole or teleportation tunnel. The loud bell sound could have been the hum of their transport technology.
While popular in modern mythology, the alien theory has significant holes. Why would an advanced civilization send two children to 12th century England with no way to get back? And why would their alien biology be so similar to humans that they could survive on Earth's food and eventually lose their alien characteristics? It stretches credibility, but the case is so bizarre that no theory can be completely discounted. It remains a cornerstone of ancient astronaut theories. But here's where the investigation takes a sharp turn toward historical fact. In the 1990s, historian Paul Harris proposed a theory grounded not in fantasy, but in the brutal politics of the 12th century. During the reign of King Stephen, England was in a state of civil war known as the Anarchy. King Henry II, his successor, fiercely persecuted the Flemish weavers and mercenaries who had settled in England, culminating in a major battle in 1173 near Bury St. Edmunds, just miles from Woolpit. Harris argues the children were Flemish. After their parents were killed in the battle, the two orphans could have fled into the dense Thetford forest. Terrified and alone, they may have lived in hiding for some time, wandering through dark forest passages and old mine workings, a subterranean experience. Their strange non-English language would have been Flemish. Their unfamiliar, finely woven clothes would have seemed alien to the local Anglo-Saxon villagers. But what about the green skin? This theory provides the most elegant explanation. The children were likely suffering from chlorosis, a severe form of anemia caused by extreme malnutrition. Also known as green sickness, it gives the skin a noticeable green tint due to a lack of red blood cells. A diet consisting only of nutrient-poor beans in the beginning would have prolonged the condition, while a balanced diet would have cured it, exactly as the historical accounts describe.
Their strange origin story can also be reinterpreted. St. Martin's Land might be a distorted memory of their home village, perhaps St. Osyth, which had a strong Flemish community. The constant twilight could be a child's memory of living under the dense canopy of the forest.
The loud bell sound that led them away could have been the ringing of the bells from the Bury St. Edmund's Abbey, which they might have followed hoping to find sanctuary, only to get lost and stumble into the pit. This theory transforms a supernatural tale into a tragic story of war, loss, and survival. The children weren't monsters or aliens, they were refugees. Their appearance was not a miracle, but a symptom of profound suffering. The villagers of Woolpit, not understanding their language or their condition, interpreted a human tragedy through the lens of folklore, creating a legend that would endure for nearly 1,000 years. It's a powerful and mostly accepted explanation, but here is a detail most accounts ignore. The Flemish theory, while strong, isn't perfect. The chroniclers were specific that the children emerged from a man-made wolf pit, not a cave leading from a forest. How did two disoriented children find their way into one of these specific traps without being seen? Furthermore, would chlorosis really make skin vibrant green, or just give it a pale, sallow tint? Some medical experts disagree on the severity of the color change described. The legend also contains elements that are hard to rationalize. The strange metallic-feeling clothes described by the villagers don't perfectly match standard Flemish weaving, and Agnes's detailed description of her homeland, with its different sun and sky, seems too specific for a traumatized child's confused memory. The story exists in a gray area, where the facts are just strange enough to keep the door open for more exotic explanations. The perfect rational theory has a few key pieces missing.
Let's revisit the diet. Why raw beans? Some botanists have suggested they might have been eating a specific type of vetch or wood pea that grows wild in forests and has an edible pod. This would be a plausible survival food for children living wild. Their initial refusal of all other food might have been due to fear and unfamiliarity, clinging to the one food source they had learned to trust while hiding in the woods. This detail adds another layer of realism to the refugee theory. But the accounts say they broke open the stalks of the beans. This sounds much more like cultivated broad beans from a farm field, not wild peas. This contradiction is at the heart of the debate. Were they wild children of the forest, or did they come from a place with agriculture, as Agnes's story of herding flocks would suggest? Every small detail can be interpreted to support either a rational or a supernatural conclusion. The story is a perfect historical Rorschach test. The fate of Agnes provides our final clues. She grew up in the service of Richard de Calne's household. The records describe her as rather loose and wanton in her conduct. She eventually married a royal official from King's Lynn in Norfolk, a man named Richard Bear, and lived out the rest of her life, presumably having children of her own. She was fully integrated into English society, a strange footnote in the history books, who was once a green child from another world. But here is a final unsettling detail. Even after learning English and living a normal life, Agnes never changed her story. She maintained that she came from St. Martin's Land, a place of twilight. If the story was a product of childhood trauma, one might expect it to fade or change over time. Her consistency suggests she genuinely believed it to be true. Was she delusional, or was she telling the truth about an experience that we, in our modern world, simply cannot comprehend?
The mystery is a perfect storm of weirdness and ambiguity. The sources are just legitimate enough to be credible, but old enough to lack forensic detail. The central event is so physically bizarre that it invites speculation, yet the context of the 12th century provides a plausible, if tragic, explanation. Every time you think you have the answer, the story presents another question, another detail that doesn't quite fit. The green children remain just out of history's grasp. Ultimately, we are left with three possibilities: a genuine supernatural event, a human tragedy misinterpreted as a miracle, or a complete fabrication by two medieval chroniclers who wanted to write a good story. Most historians lean towards the second option, seeing the legend of the green children as a distorted echo of the real-world persecution of the Flemish people. It's a reminder that sometimes the most fantastical stories are born from the darkest parts of our own history. The village of Woolpit still exists in Suffolk, England. The wolf pits are long gone, filled in by centuries of farming. But the village sign proudly depicts the two green children, a permanent monument to the day the impossible happened there. The story has become part of the town's identity, a piece of folklore that has outlived the wars and kings that may have created it. It's a local legend with global appeal, a mystery that began in a pit and now spans the world. Perhaps the truth is a mix of all theories. Perhaps they were refugee children suffering from a medical condition whose traumatized minds created the story of St. Martin's Land as a way to cope with an unbearable reality. The human mind is capable of creating entire worlds to protect itself. Their story could be one of the most extreme and vivid examples of this psychological survival mechanism ever recorded, a folk tale created not by a culture, but by the minds of two children.
We have examined the historical records, the folklore, and the medical and political theories, yet a definitive answer remains elusive. The story has been dissected for centuries, yet it retains its power to mystify. It is a testament to how a single unexplained event can ripple through time, generating more questions than answers. The Green Children are a permanent enigma, their origins as murky as the twilight world they claim to have come from. It's a mystery that history cannot solve. Whether they were fairies, aliens, or refugees, the story of the Green Children of Woolpit forces us to confront the limits of our historical knowledge. It shows how even the most bizarre tales can have roots in real human suffering. We are left with Agnes Barry, a woman who began her life as a green-skinned anomaly and ended it as an English wife and mother. Her bloodline may even continue to this day, carrying the silent memory of a lost world. The story should have ended there, a piece of medieval folklore. But the name Agnes Barry wasn't random. Modern genealogists have traced the descendants of Richard Barry and have made a startling discovery, connecting her bloodline to a powerful English family. This connection reveals a possible political motive for why the children were taken in and protected, and it adds a final, shocking twist to the most likely explanation. To understand what was hidden in her name, watch the full investigation.